All right, everyone. Welcome to Lifetime Value and Retention. We're really happy to have you today. I'm going to introduce our guest in just a few minutes here. We're going to start this webinar now, and it'll be about 30 minutes. We're going to hopefully spend about 20, maybe 25 in the content and have a little bit of time for Q&A at the end. So if at any point during this webinar, a question comes to mind, something you might like one of us to answer for you, or you want to bring up for discussion, please go ahead and click on the Q&A and post that question. And when we get to it at the end, we'll try to answer as many questions as possible. All right, so the first question we like to ask ourselves is, what are we doing here anyway? Why retention? Why is this so important that it needs its own webinar specifically dedicated to it? Well, I have a visualization I'd like to share with you that helps me put it into perspective, that hopefully it'll help for you. Most direct selling companies' sales efforts are kind of like running up an escalator that's going down. And so, what we've seen now, we have at Direct Tech Labs, we've got the largest database of direct selling behavior ever analyzed that we know of. And we've also done business cases and seen the numbers for 50 to 60 companies in the direct selling space, mostly $50 million and above in revenue. And we can tell you that the average is that for every 10 people that a company is bringing in that are buying something for the first time every month, about 7 or 8 are buying for the last time every month. And so there's this constant run to have to always recruit enough new people and every month just to even keep up with that churn. And the vast majority of the new people are really just playing catch up. And then it's just that little bit of margin above that's the growth. Now, that is interesting because if you work to run a little faster, let's say your company runs up to 11 or 12, generally what happens during those recruiting booms is the churn will also kind of follow you up and bump up to 8 or 9. And then you go back down to 10, and now it's 10-9. But one thing that can be a lot more stable is to just kind of keep running at that same pace at a more steady, sustainable pace, but to lower and slow that escalator down from 8 or 7 to 7 or 6. And that accelerates growth and brings a lot of stability to these key metrics. So if we think about it, another analogy is that churn is kind of the anchor that our companies are dragging that slows down all of these key metrics that every sales and marketing team is trying to go out and get. And rank advancement is a big one. Most ranks that we see in a company, the second or third rank in the comp plan requires a structure of, let's say maybe 15 people to be active, to build that out, to hit that rank. And so the distributor is thinking, oh, I need 15 people. But the reality is that by the time they get those 15, 8 or so have already quit. And now they got to go make up 8 more. And by the time they get those 8, 4 more are gone. Then they get those 4, 2 more are gone. They get that one more is gone. And so it could be 20 or 25 or 27 people that they actually have to get in order to hit that 15. And so you can see why rank advancement is slowed. People don't reach it as much as they could. And then when they get it, it's really hard to keep because you got to keep running against that escalator, whether you're a team or you're the entire company. Now, the interesting math here is that for every 1% that you can increase your monthly retention and hold it for a year, that'll lift your annual revenue by about 5%. Now, again, this is kind of an aggregate of all the different companies' numbers that we've seen. So it could be 4% for you, or it could be 7 or 8% for you. But regardless, there's a lot to be gained here, and we're going to dig into that. Now, this year's been an interesting one for direct selling. We've heard about this phenomenon that we call pop and drop. There's been a big pop this year for a lot of companies, and a lot of companies are starting to see that dip. Like we were saying before, the retention boom often increases churn along, the recruiting boom often increases churn along with it. And then when that boom subsides, you start to see these big dips. The question is what are we doing right now to prevent that dip from being too low so that we can keep as much of the people as we worked so hard this year? So many companies just worked so hard this year to keep up with everything, to get all those new numbers. And so the question we must ask ourselves is, what does retention mean to you? And who owns it now? And with that, I'd like to introduce our guest today. I've known Roxana Epps for a while now, and I've rarely met someone who not only understands the value of retention, but, and I can say this because we've worked together, she has implemented programs that significantly increase key retention metrics like average order size, distributor and customer lifetime value, monthly and 90-day retention, and overall engagement. Her work has driven many millions of dollars in revenue at a fraction of the cost and effort of earning a similar sum via new enrollments. And until July of this year, she was the director of retention at Plexus Worldwide. And now she's director of retention strategy and consumer insights at Young Living. Roxana, it's a pleasure to have you. Thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having me. So excited to be here. It's always a pleasure getting to speak to a fellow retention nerd like yourself. So thanks for having me.
I love when we nerd out on retention. It's some of the most fun I have. So you're one of a rare breed of executives whose primary focus is retention. So why is retention so valuable that it deserves more time and resources than most companies tend to give it? But before you answer that, let's take a look at this poll. You guys should see a poll up in front of you. It looks like a few of us have answered so far. I'm going to close this poll in a second. So if you haven't answered, now's your last chance to answer that poll. Does your company have a team dedicated to retention? I'm going to end the poll now. And it looks like 100% of everyone said no, they don't have a team. So Roxana, share your thoughts about that. Why is retention something that deserves the kind of resources that we're talking about?
In my opinion, retention is an undervalued commodity in direct sales, being that it costs significantly less to keep someone than it does to actually recruit or even win them back. Now, there is tremendous value behind recruitment as it's a core component to any successful overall growth strategy. It just shouldn't be the only focus for companies, as retaining your field is just as important, if not more so for some companies.
For many companies in the space, I mean, the extent of their retention efforts have been in promotions or fast start programs. And now, the loyalty program is starting to get a lot of traction in the space. For companies looking for more perspective, what are the foundational elements of an effective retention effort?
Yes. Here I would say first and foremost is understanding what retention is and shifting your company's mindset around it. Companies should understand that increasing your retention rate is really contingent on the consumer's experience. And when I say consumer, I mean both customers and your brand ambassadors. So the better the experience and interaction your consumers have with a brand, the more loyal that consumer will be to it. Also, the more engagement a company seeks from a consumer, the more they will feel a part of something bigger. Therefore, really understanding that retention is impacted through the experience and the quality of engagement of that interaction. Now, another fundamental element that I would say is to make retention a priority and to place significant emphasis and support around it, as it does take time to start seeing the fruits of that labor. So really properly setting up the efforts for success. Lastly, I'd say knowing where to start. In my experience, I would suggest starting with impacting your probability of next purchase metric. Really begin to understand the behavioral data, the why and the what is happening, and then turning that information into action, turning it into efforts that are going to increase the probability of your consumers spending money with you again and again. So to sum it up, I would say understanding retention, having the proper support, and knowing where to start is going to be your perfect recipe when it comes to a retention effort.
So you just kind of triggered my nerd button here when you talked about probability of next purchase recruit. And I think that like a lot of companies really aren't thinking about that. Like, what is the probability? What are the chances that somebody is going to buy again? What are the chances that they're not going to buy again? The chances that they'll recruit again or that they'll make it to a certain rank. And that's really interesting. I don't hear a lot of companies thinking that way. But being the nerd that I am, I can totally relate. I mean, all of these predictive algorithms we hear about in these documentaries, like The Social Dilemma, for those of you who have seen that running around Netflix, I highly recommend it. or, just what Amazon or Netflix or Facebook, does to all of us every day. They're all working on probabilities, right? How do we increase the probability that you'll watch another episode or add another item to your cart or scroll down your news feed one more time so they can serve you that one more ad? It's a really sophisticated way of looking at consumer behavior, and it can be a little bit intimidating, but it isn't really that much to kind of wrap your head around once you start thinking that way. So let's drill down. Let's get a little bit more concrete. What actionable advice would you give people in the industry who want to do more on the retention side? What could they start doing now and see the results in the short and medium term?
Yes, well, aside from impacting the probability of next purchase, the top three things that come to mind for me first would be letting go of fear and giving your consumers more control. In my experience, both being in the field and on the corporate side, the direct sales industry has a tendency to be so afraid to lose you that they make it harder for consumers to have full autonomy over their purchase interaction. For example, it's harder to skip a month, change their monthly products, or even reactivate or cancel a subscription. However, when I've seen companies give the consumer more control and move away from fear and into that empowering their customers, the more the customers and more their field really behaves exactly as they'd hoped they would. So when you think about it, that's one of the reasons why loyalty programs work so well. It's because you're rewarding and you're empowering your loyalists, and in turn, they're performing better for you.
Mm-hmm.
So now, given those benefits of empowering your consumer, next I'd say look at your self-service tools. It's difficult. Is it difficult to reactivate and re-engage with you? Do you have a strict loyalty program that doesn't have a lot of tools around managing it? Really look into these types of journeys and see where there's more leniency and empowerment that can be given. And then lastly, and probably just as important as anything else would be to track retention. The most common way to track retention is through lifetime value. The more your retention rates increase, the higher your ultimate lifetime values will be. However, in direct sales, I've seen that lifetime value isn't always being tracked, and that's okay. I would just say start somewhere. I've seen companies be as simple as tracking retention by total net active retained month over month. Again, I just say the most important part is just starting somewhere and starting to benchmark, especially before you introduce any new effort. So that would be my walk away advice for all of you.
And great advice it is. I mean, there's a lot to unpack in there. Lifetime value is a really a critical metric. I mean, if you can double the lifetime value of your people, you need to recruit half as many people to get the same revenue, right? And we all know how hard direct selling corporate teams work to get those new people. And a lot of pressure is on those teams because of that whole churn situation, having to constantly keep up. If we could slow that down a little bit, maybe we wouldn't have so many corporate teams that I see just burning the candle at both ends all the time, just to try to constantly be keeping up. And it's so funny because they just see it as normal. Like they don't even realize that that's like what they're doing anymore, because that just becomes like the normal way of existing, this like running, this constant sprinting. So it's great advice. And you can see what kind of loyalty you can get by facing the fear and trusting that if you just provide better service and just make things a bit easier for people, they're going to reward you with loyalty. And when you put it that way, it kind of sounds like just intuitive, right? That's what you would want as a consumer. And so let's dig into the data and digging into it, and it gives you clues into how to actually do that and successfully drive the behaviors that keep people around. So let's go a little bit deeper into these ideas of control or empowerment and focus. Of course, the core differentiator of the direct selling model, like our real competitive advantage, is in the empowering and of the relationships and influence between our distributors and their team and their customers.
Yeah, that's 100% right. Corporate has a lot of tools to serve and motivate their field directly, but we pay a lot of money to our sales force to lever that influence.
Yeah.
And we do a great job of empowering them to enroll people. Where I see companies fall a little bit short is empowering their field to retain the people that they work so hard to get.
Yeah, right on, Roxana. I mean, I can't tell you how much of a pleasure it is to have you. And we obviously sing so much of the same song all the time, and I hope we've inspired people to spend more time and resources on retention. And if I may, I'm going to just take 2 minutes and just share a specific example of what we do at Direct Tech Labs and how that works. Um, so we're talking about empowering the field to engage in these retention behaviors, right? And we do that through our tool called Distro. I'm going to do a quick 2-minute overview. If you think about it, we call these moments destiny moments, right? Moments in the life cycle of your customer, moments in the life cycle of your reps, where the right conversation with that right influencer in the network, that right upline, that right sponsor is going to increase their lifetime value. It's going to get them to buy more. It's going to get them to sell more, recruit more, longer, right? And these examples here are just small examples of some of those moments, right? Some of these moments are very easy to understand, right? They canceled a subscription, right? We've got great results, bringing 8 or 9% of those people back with our system, right? But more advanced ones use AI and probabilities, right? Like will churn in the next 30 days is a great thing that we can predict, right? Before someone even goes inactive, knowing that they might be inactive soon and then preventing that from even happening. Loyalty programs we've talked about, right? If their credits are expiring, being able to know that and being able to let them know that, or let their upline let them know that, even better, right? And then once you know that, you want to be able to reach people. And when you think about the tools that you have available to you and what percentage of people use those tools, it becomes clear that not everybody uses all the tools. And when you break down your data, you'll find that a lot of the people that are the bread and butter that are bringing the new people in every month are people with 1 or 2 or 3 customers. And so the best way often to reach them is by text message, because you can reach anybody in any country in the world that has a phone number by a text for a really cheap price. And so if they do use your tools, you can reach them that way, but you can reach 100% of everybody this way. And they click on a link, they get the opportunity, they hear this is what Maria needs to do in order to be able to remain active. And for her, it's about sponsoring. For someone else, it might be a product experience. And so you're able to give them all the context they need in a really simple interface, nothing to log into, nothing to download. And you can reach all the way down to the bottom of the network to someone who's barely active, that only has 2 customers and doesn't really use the tools, but will actually do this one task a good percentage of the time. So you get that reach. And then, of course, you at corporate need to know, how is this working? It's really, for those of you in marketing, marketing tech, right? There's a funnel that people have to go through between being identified as being in a destiny moment, getting that message out to their upline, knowing that it was viewed, knowing that it was completed. And most importantly, not enough tools in direct selling do this. We've really got to raise the bar, being able to know, hey, how much money am I putting into this thing? And how much money am I getting out of it? And how do I measure that really acutely so that I can know that I'm putting this much in and I'm getting that much out? And we've been able to do that so predictably that we even offer 100% money back guarantee to our customers. So if you want to learn more, reach out to me. I'm very happy to share more about this with you guys. Let's do a quick recap and then we'll move into Q&A. Number 1, think about your member experience and the probabilities, right? Number 2, let go of that fear. Look hard at your business rules. Are you making it easy for people, right? Would you want someone to do what you do to your people to you, right? And just think about that golden rule. And then lastly, engage the field in that retention behavior. So this has been awesome. Roxana, thank you so much. I'm going to move us into Q&A. Anybody have any questions, please post that in the Q&A. While we're waiting for those questions to come in, next week we've got Gareth Hooper, veteran industry CIO. We'll be talking about the IT's role in retention. And so if you haven't signed up for that, you can either reach out to me, or you might have gotten an email, or you'll find the LinkedIn event as well if that's how you came in. So any questions from all of you to Roxana about any of the things that she discussed? And I can sing the Jeopardy music, in memory of the great Alex Trebek, for those of you who know that he recently passed. I remember nerding out to Alex Trebek as a kid with my grandfather watching Jeopardy. I don't know how many of you have that memory. So any questions here, or have we been that thorough that that there are no questions because we've just done such a fantastic job? I'm going to give it one more minute for questions. And what I'll do is I'll just back up here one slide so we can see the key points that we were talking about, if it will let me. No, it doesn't want to let me. Keynote refuses to go backwards. There we go. So member experience and probabilities, letting go of the fear, looking at the business rules. Maybe Roxana, let's talk a little bit about what letting go of the fear really means. You want to talk about that a little bit? I'd be curious to dig on that.
Yeah, fear of losing you. So we, implement strict, business rules or parameters around specific functionality, whether that be your subscription, your loyalty programs, even your cancellation. And so with that, just letting go of that fear and more empowering, more allowing your consumers to have, again, that full autonomy over their purchase interactions with you, will lead you to a much better state. You'll be surprised with how much mitigation on the back end you'll have, mitigating loss on the back end.
Another question came in was how do you calculate lifetime value?
Yeah, that's definitely a sophisticated metric. And there's different ways you could do it. You've got your lead scoring on the front end, and it's you've got your lead scoring on the front end. So how much value are you bringing in? And then you have your scoring on the back end with ultimately where did it end up. So a lot of the times it'll be segmented by your different classifications. So that plays a part. It's also plays a part with how much
reps will have different lifetime values, right? So lifetime value for customers is relatively simple, isn't it? Just like if I'm looking at the lifetime value, it's basically just everything you've ever bought combined, right? So if your total spend in your lifetime is like $500, then your LTV is $500.
So that's how you would do it non-direct sales, but you also have to consider the component of your org volume. So there's a little bit complexity there.
If you're a distributor, yes, but if you're a customer, maybe.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, so that would be a good way to look at it for your customers. But yes, when it comes to your distributors, that's done a little bit different.
One way we've approached it in our systems is we look at it, we say, what about this concept of open line? A lot of people might know. So basically like my volume and then the volume of my team all the way down to someone that's of an equal or higher rank. And then it cuts like at that point. I've seen some people look at it that way.
Yeah, it just depends on your levels of payout and kind of how deep the comp. Yes, there's. That's why I say it's definitely a more sophisticated metric. So I would say there's a lot of different ways to look at it. It just depends on, even cost to bring in, recruitment costs, a lot goes into it.
That's something a lot of companies don't even consider is like, what is the cost? They think it's zero because most of it goes out in the comp plan, but there are training expenses and all the events you're doing and a lot of that stuff that lead to so many recruits in a month, right? And there you can get a cost per acquisition out of that. A question just came in. Okay, more of a statement, but many comp plan rules at companies are, quote, sticks, which downgrade people if they don't meet certain requirements. Those downgraded people are usually gone forever. I'm a fan of removing those in many cases, but would love your thoughts as they dramatically impact retention for a segment of people.
Yeah, that's the exact kind of thinking that we want, right? That's exactly what we're hoping that you took away from the conversation is just looking at those kind of strict parameters. Obviously, at the end of the day, it needs to be a win-win. So, look at, again, where you can give that leniency and where the numbers still make sense. So it's definitely going to be a give and take to make it work with your comp plan, but it's absolutely something you should look at for sure.
I think that goes back to that customer experience, right? Of like, are you making it easy for people? I saw a really interesting, I always like to connect like what the direct to consumer channels do to some of what we do in terms of customer experience. And I encountered this really cool supplement company that was delivering these personalized supplements. And as you were getting the supplement every day, every packet that you took had a number on it. And you could just, every once in a while, the app would be like, hey, what number are you on? And you just type the number of the supplement that you just took. And by that, they would know what your inventory is. And by that, they would automatically adjust your auto ship to make sure that you never get to a point where you've got way too much product. And also, they also know your consumption. So if you're not consuming enough, they had a whole bunch of marketing emails already set up to encourage you to like produce to consume more, so that you could actually get more of the results of actually taking the supplement. And so it was so customer driven that their 90-day retention was like amazing. Like they did such a good job at getting people to get through the whole first 90 days of the supplements, because it wasn't like this kind of like thing where, oh, this happens a lot in direct selling, right? Like the box arrives, like you got so excited about taking whatever the thing is, right? And then the box arrives and it kind of sits on the kitchen counter for like a week or 2 or 3 or 5. And then finally you're like, oh yeah, I should open this thing. What was this again? And like, so then there's no second order, and then like, blah, 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 blah. Right. So how do we like identify, that's another destiny moment, right? That like something, it arrived, and like, how do we get people consuming that? That distributor oftentimes is on to the next acquisition. They haven't even considered the idea that like, maybe I should make sure this person actually opens the box and actually starts to consume this product that I work so hard to sell them. So there's data in there, there's customer experience in there, marketing tech. All right. Well, I think we're there. I want to thank everybody again. Roxana, it's been such a pleasure. Thank you so much. Will you come back and do this again, maybe sometime next year?
No pressure.
Yeah, no pressure.
Yeah.
It's been great having you.
Yeah, we'll see for sure.
Thanks, everybody. And all of you have a wonderful holiday season. Here's to an amazing new year. Get that rest. We all ran real hard this year. So let's make sure we get some R&R for the new year. And here's to 21. Thank you, everyone. Have a great day.